I'm recording. Star Citizen Not So Live, starring Jared Huckabee and Todd Pappy, will begin in just a moment. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Star Citizen Live. I'm your host, Jared Huckabee. Unlike most Star Citizen Lives, this week's show is pre-recorded. As happens sometimes in life, schedules come into conflict. We're required to be in other places at the times when we want to do things and everything. So in order to bring you this week's show without having to postpone and reschedule to another week, we opted to record this a little bit earlier and replay it for you. So welcome to Star Citizen Almost Live, starring Jared Huckabee and Todd Pappy. Hi, Todd.
Hello. Hello.
We're gonna have to I'll put a little thing at the bottom, like previously recorded. Maybe we'll see if that goes through at the bottom. Todd, because everybody's show is somebody's first show, tell them who you are, what you do for Star Citizen.
I'm Todd Pappy, Star Citizen Live Game Director. Basically, what that means is I'm working with Tony and Chris and working on PU and or the persistent universe side of it, and building out different gameplay, different content, and making sure that everything that goes into the game feels good, looks good.
And compliment you on your Salty Crew shirt.
Thank you.
We're going to have a question about fishing. We're going to have at least one question about fishing, I promise.
Yeah.
All right, so today's show is all about Alpha 317. So as we usually do, we put up a thread up in Spectrum to collect questions. A lot of folks' questions had less to do with 317 and more about the long-term future of Star Citizen. Again, I'm going to remind folks that today's focus is we're going to try to keep it to the stuff of 317. We might dip out of 317 here and there, but for the most part, we're going to try to stay with our upcoming patch. To that end, let's just jump into the questions, Todd. Right off the bat, one of the biggest news, one of the biggest features of all 317 was finally having a keybind for calling the ATC. Some folks called it the greatest feature in Star Citizen history. Some folks called it what the hell took so long. This question says, how will the Hail ATC button deal with multiple ATCs being in range? New Babbage International Spaceport, the ground vehicle entrance, the Platinum Bay at the Commons, for example. Will it hail the closest one, or will it hail all two or three at the same time? How does this work?
So right now, I'll hail the closest one. If we need to adjust it in the future to actually cycle through multiple ones, so you can, tap it, we'll look at that. But right now, we're going to go out with it just calling the closest one.
Okay. And what took so long?
I don't know. Like, just from a new player experience standpoint, like this will help a hell of a lot.
Let's see. One of the big features of 317 is refueling. This next question says, is there going to be a fuel quantity rebalance for ships in 317 to make refueling necessary and to force more planning, or are current fuel tank values going to be left as is for testing, similar to how medical gameplay is useful but not mandatory?
It will be rebalanced. Now, the sweet spot that we're going to be looking for is like, how often do you actually need to refuel? Like, we don't want it to be like you have to refuel every 15 minutes or every 20 minutes. Like, it should be that it takes longer. It's not something that you go through or have to think about every single, ideally hour. So my sweet spot, I think, is basically between an hour and a half and 2 hours that you need to be thinking about it. That's just from straight flying. Now, obviously, that'll depend on what ship you use, how you fly it, so on and so forth. And then also, if we're talking about quantum fuel, then it also depends on how far you're jumping, where you're jumping to, so on and so forth. So, like, I think that we are doing a rebalance, for it. But again, I think this will be our initial stab, and then from there we'll do tweaks and tuning, as it goes. And it might be that we're hitting very specific ships afterwards, or it might be, we just do a kind of general rebalance as well.
I think it's really important because we have gained so many new players over the last year and stuff. Folks who it may be easy to forget, or some folks may have never been made aware. Our live environment is still an alpha testing environment, so we are going to use that opportunity. However, this goes out when 317 drops, whatever the rate is when it drops. It is very likely to change, to be adjusted, as Todd said, either on an individual ship basis or across the board. We're going to use this opportunity to find that sweet spot.
Even when it's in PTU, so we're doing initial passes, and then we're doing adjustments, and then from there, once it goes live, then I'm sure we'll be doing other adjustments for any other subsequent patches that we have. So if we see any outliers or anything there that needs to be wrangled in, we will go in and fix it.
Okay. The hull A is coming online with 317. With the hull A needing to be in expanded mode to carry cargo, has the issue of ships resetting their transformation upon logging out or in from the ship bed been fixed? Or will you log in to find that all of your cargo has been sheared off because it defaulted to the compact position?
So, as of today, which is March 17th, I was just going to say 317. But is it 17th or 16th? 17th. 17th. Yeah.
We are talking about 317 on 317.
Yeah, very good. That there was a possible fix for the code that went in today. So basically, when we ship it, it should be solid.
And I know this is a more ship-related question, but will we be able to trigger the transformation at will? I know a lot of time the transformations were linked to the landing gear and stuff like that. Do you know if?
Actually, I don't know. That's something I would have to ask John about and how that triggers. But I mean, I'm assuming it's when we're going into different states.
Okay.
So just like VTOL or landing gear, so on and so forth. So,
okay. Another big feature coming into 317 is the ability to sell stuff from our inventories. This question says, can armor and weapons obtained from the pledge store be sold, or is it blacklisted to prevent people from abusing character resets to continuously resell armor and weapons?
Anything that's web enabled or web entitled can't be sold. If something actually is sold, then that's a bug and we actually need to fix it. But when we last tested it, it worked that way. So anything that was, web entitled to armor or FPS weapons shouldn't be able to be sold.
Gotcha. This question came up quite a bit. Will there be an inventory wipe since the selling feature is coming and loot is updating?
Right now, we're not planning on it, or at least we haven't had those initial talks. Again, for us, now that we've got persistence and everything, we're trying to, sounds horrible, we're trying to wipe less, and from there, we go in and just try to let it live and let it lie and see how it affects the economy. But obviously, if there's any sort of outliers or we see any sort of exploits or anything like that, then we'll go in and fix that.
Todd Pappy trying to wipe less. You heard it here first, folks. This is why this is the only place that would hire me. Let's see. Refueling gameplay. Is there only one type of hydrogen and one type of quantum travel fuel for 317?
Yeah, for right now, it's just one. We'll be looking into grades of fuel later on. Obviously, that to me ties more into like when we start getting into refining gameplay and when you're able to basically concoct your own gas types and everything like that. So, but basically, if I remember correctly, like, we're just talking about doing some minor adjustments. So, let's say it was a fuel grade of 98 versus 95. Okay, well, then that just means, if you're putting in cheaper gas, then wear and tear increases, other options increase. Maybe you're not getting the same boost. So we have all the numbers and all the factors that we need to go in and adjust. We have those available to us. So then it's just once we put in the hooks to have these different gas types, then this will allow us to start messing with that.
Since mining was first introduced, we've seen mining evolve quite a bit with additional iterations, more features, more side features that accent it and stuff like this. Can we expect something similar with refueling, that it will continue to evolve?
No, actually, not in the short term. So in the short term, basically that team is finishing off resource management, which is really the power gameplay that we need to basically get the engineering gameplay in ships, as well as making sure that our environments and ships feel alive and can be taken down in different ways. So it doesn't always end with the ship actually blowing up. And then that team is also working on life support and also working on salvage right now. So those are their main focuses. With refueling, this was really to get us prepped for Pyro. And so, like with Pyro, we won't have the same kind of infrastructure, when the way that we're building the solar system, because it's more gang run, as well as places will be abandoned or run down. So this is actually us prepping for this, so that if you need fuel in Pyro, you at least can find a place that might sell you fuel, or they can come out and do it. Obviously, there's other gameplay that could be happening there, meaning some other people show up and with the nefarious intent. So, but yeah, from this standpoint, right now we'll get this iteration out, and then we'll move on to other things.
The next follow-up question touched on what you just said here. So are we actively working on a balance pass for all ships regarding QT travel distances, fuel tank capacities, fuel scoops, all that good stuff?
Yeah, and in fact, a lot of the ships that weren't supposed to have fuel scoops, because we didn't have a way to constantly refuel them or refuel them out in the middle of nowhere. Now those fuel scoops are going away, and then the rebalancing is happening as well. So again, at least in Evocati, once they can actually play it, then they should be able to see those numbers. And then obviously once we go wave 1 through 4, then they should be able to start seeing the effects of it as well.
Okay. Will the ships that came out in previous patches be in in-game stores? There were always ships added in one patch available in the in-game shops in the next patch, but currently we have a bunch of ships from 3.15 that cannot be bought in the game.
Yeah, so basically the Cyclone or the Cyclone MT and the 72 Archimedes were added, and they'll be in 3.17. The Hover Quad and Cutlass Steel will be done for 3.18 at the latest.
Okay. What would you consider the top 3 milestones or achievements in Alpha 3.17?
At least for me, selling. So this allows us to, because before now we can go out, we can have, missions, find stuff, collect stuff with loot. Now you can actually sell stuff. Then refueling is a big one for us. Just because I view that more as a minor career, but it is still a career nonetheless. Then there was, these two are kind of side by side, but there was some tech that was done for like the scheduling and automation support for dynamic events. So before we always had to trigger this, by hand. So now this helps us out, and it's really on the back end. It's not really player facing. And then, at least from a visual standpoint, and making our planets feel alive. The stuff that Will did with rivers, and same with the planet team stuff. So that's, I know it's four, but those are the three big ones, or the four big ones for me.
Hey, I'm sure nobody is more happy than Eric Green to not have to sit there and trigger these dynamic events manually anymore. Shout out to Eric Green. With refueling coming to 317, will we see any NPC missions that involve this type of gameplay?
Not for this release. I mean, considering right now we're still getting the feature. We're basically finalizing the feature right now. Like, we're putting the finishing touches on it, and then with a lot of the AI focus being on S42 right now. Like, this is one of the things where, with our kind of adjustment more towards S42 focus and getting the future teams working towards that stuff. And with S42, they need, a lot of different things that we need, meaning like, planetary nav mesh, or AI, or basically AI flying in, landing on planets, reinforcements coming off, these types of things that are a little bit more combat focused. So that's really where a lot of their energy is going into. If we do this, it would be one of our feature teams on the PU, helping to build up those behaviors and working that out. But right now, it's not planned.
I'm glad you touched on that. Let's jump one of these questions up here. But from the chat, from the thread here, we've talked a bit already. People know who have followed the roadmap. They know who they followed the monthly reports, or Rich Tyber appearing on this show in the past. Our core gameplay pillar and some of the other teams have moved into I say Squadron 42 first focus. It's not that they're not making stuff for the PU.
When we say core gameplay, what we're talking about is player systems. So like, FPS systems, and that's what we call our core team.
So this question, and you can expand on that when we talk about this here, goes, have you noticed much of an impact with the gameplay pillars moving to, this is the gameplay pillars, but the core gameplay pillar moving to Squadron 42? From your vantage point, how has this affected the year's schedule and content cadence?
A little bit. I mean, right now we're in the middle of the adjustment. So, Rich and I talk about it constantly, and any sort of feature that, like, the core teams are working towards are basically, they're going through and they're working out how does S42, how does this work with S42, and then from there, if we need to take it and put it and bring it to the PU, then we'll go in and we'll actually take it and adjust it and get it working and either add what we feel like it needs from a Star Citizen side to it, or we'll take it just as is. But since they're going through and getting it to what they would consider alpha state for S42, and then it just trickles down, like, that's fine. It just might be that when they're not really dealing with the same constraints that we deal with right now. So basically, when we go through and we're doing this, we've got go no goes in the middle of the quarter, and so that's when we do our branching and everything. They're just working, and this is really kind of how traditional game development would work, versus building the train at while you're on the track,
laying the tracks while you're
exactly. So basically they're just building, and then from there, it depending on where it comes in, that's when it'll drop to us, and they'll do their integrations, they'll go into game dev, and then from there we'll be able to take it and run with it. So it just depends on when it comes in, in the quarter, and then how much work needs to be done on it. So, but we do. I mean, not all teams have gone over there. Like we still have a very large content team that works on the PU side, so in the EU as well as in Montreal. And then we also have three different feature teams that still work on PU specific features in the EU as well as in the US. So it's not like everything has stopped on PU to go work on S42. It's stuff still happening for PU. It's just that any of these core things that were needed for S42 first go there first, and then come down to us.
It's just a rearrangement of what's always happened. It used to be that it worked for PU and then it was adapted for Squadron. Now it's
Yeah,
just worked for Squadron and then it'll be adapted for the PU.
yeah,
So
exactly.
it's just we just flip the waterfall.
Yeah, and it's not a bad thing, in order to actually get that game out, and frankly, I think all the teams and even I have a more of an outside view, but I think the teams there have been making great progress and have really felt that switch, and just like when it was on PU, like we felt that instant, it's basically like in four-wheel drive versus two-wheel drive and you're stuck in the mud, so like you feel that instant, all right, go, everybody's focused on this, everybody's pushing. So I think it's been a great thing to happen for that team, and also for the company in order to get that out.
Yeah, and it'll be a good thing for the PU once we get past this transition period. Ideally, the idea is, and we'll, as always, we'll see if this pans out. But the idea is that these features will then come into the PU baked
Yeah,
a little
they
more.
will. Well,
So
yeah, a little bit more baked versus half baked. But like there's a lot of different things that S42 needs, we need, but there were certain things that we're in complete opposite, needs, so for example, like I feel like we need careers and we need to be pushing towards these things, versus Rich is like, no, I need this, for S42. And so like it's it's just those types of fights were always happening behind the scenes. And then, Chris would come in and be like, no, no, I think this is the priority. And you would do those calls. But now, before it was definitely, I think, more PU focused, but now it's like, no, no, this is S42. Todd, you don't get to have this, or Tony, you don't get to have this. And
right away.
we know we right away, but versus like we want it now, and we're a little bit like Veruca Salt, but for us it allows us to, we're still getting it, it's just we're not getting it instantly, and so it just requires a little bit more patience, and that's not why I'm wearing the Salty Crew shirt. So
And I also want to be clear before it gets quoted out of context. When you say we need more patience, you're talking about you and your teams need more patience. Just
yeah. Well, no, it's really more me, So, like, just because again, like like since Tony and I are the driving forces on this, we have to be pushing, and so it's always, I want, like, we're the players, and we're basically wearing little Timmy's hats or whatever of the players out
please,
there, and
sir,
saying,
can I have some more?
yeah, and saying, I want this, and I want it now, and so then the teams are like, well, you can have this, but in this time, so and then it's just us having those discussions.
This is where I'm going to take a minute to let me push the button here. This is where I'm going to take a minute to entreat those folks who are watching the show and writing up summaries and going to Reddit and making, or Spectrum and or wherever, and making posts about this or that, to please watch and rewatch and re-listen to that entire thing in context. Todd is being very open and being very candid about this change with you, and we absolutely appreciate him. And I entreat you to, when you talk about this online, to include all of the context and not to just take one line or half of one
Yeah.
line and
Yeah.
go alarmist with it somewhere else.
I mean, the work is being
Trying.
done.
You and me.
Yeah. The work is being done, and it's just that right now, we're getting things that are funneling into um, the PU now, like some fixes or those types of things. And then we'll have more next quarter, and then we'll have more than the following quarter.
Right.
So, like we are in the middle of that adjustment, in the middle of
Yeah.
that transition. It's just a little bit slower now, and we know that it will speed up as time goes on.
Um, the flip side of that, next question, with the new roadmap going for more complete gameplay rather than earlier in the roadmap and thus less content per patch, can we expect more quality of life improvements along the way?
Well, I guess I'm going to give you the kind of the generic answer for that. I mean, we're constantly trying to improve the quality of life. I mean, it's something that we've been trying to do for multiple patches, multiple years. And it's always dependent on what the team is doing. Meaning, because we have something like 50 different feature teams, and content teams. It really depends on what each team is doing, and like if they're slammed on some sort of feature or release, or if they're in the middle of just building something, then it's a lot easier for them to go in and fix a fair amount of quality of life things there. And then it'll also depend on how complicated that quality of life fix is. For example, like we know the star map is broken. We know, and it's basically, but the star map is being worked on, and it's basically that team's number one priority for S42, and then from there it will come to us. But there's things like that are more complicated, and we try to spot fix it as much as we possibly can. But part of that is just we know that there's certain features that just need a full rework, and then, but again, it depends on kind of the quality of life. Like, we're focusing on, the ships and trying to go through, fix any sort of lighting issues, fixing any sort of vis area issues, anything like that. Like, we have our lists of stuff that needs to be done, and through every quarter, the teams are trying to go through and fix it. So.
You've worked on multiple games here. Reworking a feature. Is this something normal that happens through any game development, or is this something unique because we're running a live environment in the middle of our development?
It depends on different things. So usually with normal game development, you really kind of get one shot at it, and you're working through it. And a lot of times, once you get to alpha, and you get the game all together, then you have those, malarkey just hit the fan moments, and look at and go, oh, this thing really needs to be cleaned up, or this thing needs to be rebuilt. Let's rebuild it as fast as we possibly can, or we, duct tape it. Now, for us, we're in a very unique situation. There's certain things that were done a long time ago, and then now that we've got a bigger universe, it's being updated. Like, for example, the QT HUD and other things like that. Like, that to me is just switching it over to a different HUD, and fixing that, and that will fix a lot of the QT issues that we have. So from there, like, there's other things there that just either teams have other higher priorities that are needed for S42 or needed for PU that kind of get in the way of this stuff a lot of times. So, just because we are dealing with the live environment, and, when we are doing feature work, like before it was, we've got 6 weeks on and then kind of 6 weeks of bug fixing and trying to solidify things, and you're doing work, but at the same time you've got live must fixes or evocati must fixes or PTU must fixes that are coming in, plus quality of life. So like it's just a mixture of you're working on the feature, but then you're kind of it's a little bit of stutter stepping that's happening. So versus traditional game development, it's just you plow on, you work, and then you really get to alpha, and a lot of times that's when you take a
You just kind of hope it's all works.
Yeah, exactly. And then from there, between alpha and beta and final, a lot of times that's when you're seeing a lot of what I would consider crunch, because a lot of times they're not in the state that you want it to be in, so therefore you have to go in and fix it in a very, very short time period. So, and that to me is the hard part.
All right. We had a little detour into the deep, more philosophical questions of game development. Let's get to something easy. What the hell's up with the coffee shop vendor? Out of all the things that were prioritized, is it in preparation of something more substantial? It just seems like a reskinned bartender from where we're sitting.
It is. I mean, on the surface, it is. So basically, this was one of our junior designers' kind of first tasks. It was getting in and doing this, and this is kind of when the AI teams were shifting over towards S42 and basically dealing with other features. So, excuse me, this guy and the AI team, or the content AI team, were working on this, and basically we're getting moved around and pushed around onto different things. So, but this was something that they were working on and cleaning up, and this is really how we deal with vendors is basically they will be different reskins of the bartender, but in reality, like where I wanted this thing to go more towards was the black market dealer, so somebody that can sell you something, because like at least for black markets, we don't feel it's right that all right, hey, you're fencing something to a kiosk versus somebody. It's missing that personal feeling. So that's really where it's heading. And there were some code changes that were done underneath, to basically move it towards it that way. But I can definitely see from an outside perspective of this is a reskin, and in many ways it is.
It's an important. I brought it up not just because I thought it was funny and I like throwing you curveballs every once in a while, but again, this is the only place that'll hire me. But I think it's important. We don't always. When I say we, I mean the folks outside of game development. I'm a fan of other games and stuff like this. We don't always see the context behind some of these decisions, and we often forget that video game development, Star Citizen, just like anything else, there's turnover. There's new people coming on board. There's old people leaving for other opportunities. And when these new people come on board, you don't just throw them down the well and be like, make server meshing happen. You start them on these smaller, beginning tasks. Many times they have to learn the tools that we use. They have to learn the processes that we've developed and stuff like this. So a lot of times when you see when backers see kind of a head scratcher, like this seems like a weird kind of side kind of thing like this, whether it's our game or some other game or whatever. Keep in mind there's always context.
I mean, there's so for example, like there's combat features that need to be worked on or focused on, or there's flight features that need to be worked on, focused on. Well, it's the same thing with social features. So, right. Like this is just something that, whether it be a pizza vendor or a coffee vendor or any noodle vendor, like there's just vendors in game that, need to be worked on, need to be built out. Like it was just that we chose this one first and then that's what we did. So, but in many ways, this is just laying the groundwork for other things to come. But for right now, a lot of that focus, again, the feature team and the tech team, most of their focus is shifted over towards S42. So it's really basically getting that stuff working, and most of theirs are going to be focusing on combat. Making sure that that's tight.
It's like the moist eyeballs thing, people. It's like people work on the things that they're here to work on. Let's go back into some more feature discussion here. Are the prices of items that can be sold to vendors going to vary as more people sell said items, or is it going to be fixed prices for each and every item they find?
Right now, it'll be fixed. In the future, we will be going through and adding variability based off of like wear and tear, how many items that store actually has in its stock, so on and so forth. But like right now, it will be fixed.
Okay. Do you know if those items go into the inventory to then be sold back to other players? Like if I sell up 500 med pens to a vendor, are they going to have 500 med pens to sell to other people now?
It might. I don't know how that because right now, like, I don't think it's an additive quantity on. I don't think it adds it up on top of it. I think it's basically like, all right, hey, we'll buy it and then kind of clean it out of the, like, just like for we have different things that interject into the economy and things that we use to pull out of the economy. So like, I think with this is just a way for us to pull stuff out of the economy right now.
Key term right now.
Mm-hmm.
Are the Oh, I already did that one. With Rivers coming in 317, has there been any broader discussions recently or anything in development this year on what gameplay mechanics Rivers and Water in general players might see?
There's been talks. So I mean, there's the dirt buildup or material buildup that happens, just in general. So like, you see it like with the frost on the armor, but we need to get frost on weapons. We need to get frost on backpacks, so on and so forth. So it would be the same thing that would happen here. Like you get mud buildup on ships or on your player. And then from there, we have talked about swimming. It's just right now, as swimming's not a huge focus for S42. Otherwise, we would have got it, um, sooner, than we are. And then from there, we're still focusing on basically filling out other core gameplay careers, versus doing, like fishing or that kind of stuff. So, even though I love fishing, but like I feel like we need core gameplay careers first before we start going in that road.
You just scooped my last question. Fine, whatever. Let's see. Any news on the implementation of Quantum? Now that selling items is around the corner, will the selling price vary? I guess. Okay, so any news on the implementation of Quantum? We'll leave it there.
Yeah. So this I talked to Tony about it today. So they're still planning on Quantum in 317 to dictate the price of 3 commodities: repair materials, quantum fuel, and hydrogen fuel, and where service beacons occur, and the price, and then 3 probability volume tags: piracy, security, and freighters, at about a dozen locations. So like that's the way that the first iteration of Quantum will be put in, and then from there, again, every quarter we'll build on it and adjust it and then go from there.
So I'm sorry, did I mishear you? You're saying that Quantum will be dictating the prices of those things in 317?
It's that, yes. So, but it'll be dictating the price for 3 commodities, not all the commodities, just 3 of them.
But so, I think that's news in and of itself. So that some aspect of Quantum will be driving stuff in 317.
That's the goal. Yeah.
Okay. How long until shopping kiosks are able to filter their stock more effectively so you can make better informed purchases? Is listing every single color of a particular piece of armor, for example, an efficient way to display them succinctly? Wow, the questions are. I'm into the questions this week.
Well, so for this one, first things first, we've done a complete rebalance of what's actually being sold in stores, and we've actually pulled out a lot of them, and it will be in loot containers now. So where we were getting like 20 or 30 armors that had the same colors or sorry, different color variants, now you should see a much smaller stock, and then from there. We do know that there needs to be code reworks and adjustments to the actual UI, but right now we do currently have other what we view as other higher priorities to get those fixed. But yeah, I have certain things there that like even when you're buying ammo and sort of attachments, for the FPS weapons, remembering, okay, oh yeah, it's this FPS weapon that I need to buy the ammo for. Like, there's different ways that we can adjust it and make sure that it's more user friendly. It's just currently we have other higher priorities, for that team to be working on, like physicalized cargo and other stuff that Tony's working on.
Speaking of physicalized cargo, the ability to sell or even access stolen ship cargo. Anything you can tell us about that? Does that require the physical cargo refactor?
Yeah, it does require the physicalized cargo. So, once that gets going, then you should be able to interact with the payloads that are in the cargo area, and be able to pick them up, adjust them, steal them, so on and so forth. So, like and then also when you blow up ships, we'll get rid of the 1-8 SU that pops out, and so now it'll be the proper inventory actually pops out, and then you can hoover that up and go.
Are there any new? Is there any new mission content for Alpha 317?
Maybe for a point patch, but for initial release, no. The teams are really focusing on getting what at least I call verbs out, like obviously we've got deliver or attack, defend, so on and so forth, but we have a list of verbs, and so each time we're building one of those verbs, it takes us a little while to build up the tech that's needed for it, and then also build up the first modular iteration, and then from there being able to implement it into the locations. So right now we've got a team in Montreal working on stuff that's will be showing, I think, pretty soon in probably one of our releases, and then obviously our teams right now in the EU are really focusing on getting Pyro working, getting other things built, and making sure that we're when we release Pyro, it's actually strong, and making sure that for our space stations, for our outposts and everything like that, like there's things to do there.
Okay. Is asteroid scanning getting fixed in 317?
We did do a fix for it. Now we'll need to check and see if we need to do any other fixes, but basically some of that might need to wait until server meshing comes online. But we did do a fix.
Okay. Do you want to give us any kind of update on how server meshing is going? Is that even in your wheelhouse?
That's not in my wheelhouse at all.
I didn't think so. Think so. I tried, folks.
Yeah.
Let's see. Will players and or NPCs be able to issue refuel beacons for owners of Starfarers to respond to at launch, or will that be added in subsequent releases?
Right now, it'll be in later releases. So it's something that we know we need to update, and we need to adjust, kind of the way we do our service beacons, at least from a UI standpoint first, and then from there we'll be able to add the refuel.
Okay. let's talk about the desync improvements a bit. Folks who are playing Evocati right now are noticing some noticeable improvements to desync. I've been personally holding back talking about it because I tried to avoid being Lucy with the football in Peanuts. Yeah. Like, hey, look, it's better, and then people get excited about it, and then I end up yanking it away. I really tried to avoid that. Since it's already out there and people are starting to ask about it right now, what can you tell us about what's currently happening, why it's happening, how it's happening? What do you know?
So I talked to Dave Coulson about this today, and you wanted to make sure that I was very, very clear on this. So it's not, the issue is a desync in time, not in position. So basically, right now, the way it works is the more you move, the more it's wrong. And this was really done to smooth out the movement of the ships and making sure that things aren't, just jittering all over the place. So what we've done is we've exchanged that there will be more time synchronized, but the ships might jitter a little bit more. So, and what will happen is we'll need to kind of see how bad the trade-off is and see if this will really stick, or if we need to think of a different way of going. But, no matter what, this will always be a continued effort, for us, as long as it's an issue, and feel it's an issue and you guys feel it's an issue. And it's not something that's, this might not be the complete fix, but it's more in the right direction. So it might be that, in the future, it's kind of a mix between the position and the time, so you do get a little jitter, but that's something that, Dave and the team will be looking at and seeing how they can fix it even better. But right now, this is the thing that they wanted to try out and see if it feels pretty good, and then we go from there.
Yeah, it's we've all been pretty excited on this end since we first started seeing it in Evocati and stuff, and it's hard because I know, I'm talking with Tyler, I'm talking with Jake, I'm talking with all like we want to run up to the top of the mountains and scream like, hey, how awesome this is, but at the same time we know what the nature of game development is and stuff like this, and it may be good today, but then something happens tomorrow and stuff like this. So it's
I think there's so many other factors that come into play. Obviously, speed of your actual machine, speed of your internet connection, the server frame rate, so on and so forth. So, like once we get into wider PTU, then that to me is really where the proof in the pudding happens. And once we see larger numbers on this, but yeah, I do think it's a step in the right direction.
Cautious optimism is what I recommend at the moment. And then as far as the server machine stuff goes and stuff, I know folks have been asking for an update and stuff like this. I see it all in the questions for this. It is still ongoing. It is still proceeding as we stated. Basically, what you saw at CitizenCon still applies. What you saw in the wonderful Ask Me Anything follow-up Q&A the community team did afterwards still applies. All that stuff is still on track. It's just we're not at a point now where there's anything really new to tell you other than things are still proceeding.
It's still on track.
How we said they would.
Yeah.
So trust me, when we have
basically all the downstream teams, like we're still working towards those dates, and we're still so we're still building. We're trying to make sure that everything is ready. So it really just comes down to that team working on it.
Yep. And then perhaps the most important thing I want to remind everybody, because I'm a fucking killjoy, pardon my language. We'll blurb that. It's pre-recorded. We'll see if I remember to mute that. Is that it won't be a light switch. It's not going to be there's not going to be a day where server meshing is turned on and everything is better. Quite honestly, it's probably going to be a day where we turn it on and everything breaks, and then we'll have to fix it and adjust and stuff like this. But it will continue to be iterated on and refined and adjusted just like anything else. So manage some expectations, and let's hope I remember to go back and beep or mute that because it's pre-recorded. Probably won't though. It was mentioned in ISC that rivers are a simple case of a few clicks and some tweaks. Why are we only getting one? Should we expect more with every patch, or will they go on the back burner now that we've got one?
Part of it is when the feature actually came in, because Will did the first one, so versus the Planet team doing it. So Will was basically working out the code, and then from there was other things that, from visual standpoint, that needed to be adjusted and worked out. And so there are plans to add them to Microtech and to add more to Microtech and add them to other planets that actually make sense. And so it was just that the Planet team was focusing on different things, and in reality, I think, the feature, we did the go no go for it, I want to say early February. So, for us, again, mid-February, that's when we cut things off and we say, okay, we're branching. So there was no other time for the teams to go in and adjust and do things.
Yeah. So to the last part, do you think we'll add more in subsequent patches, or are they going on the back burner?
No, we'll add more. So, I mean, as far as I know, it'll be something for 3.18, 3.19.
Do you know if it has a name? Does this one river have a name?
No.
I asked Will when we filmed, and he goes, I don't know. So I don't think it actually has a name.
We can call it the Will.
Maybe we'll do a social media contest. I don't know. I'll talk to Dave.
Yeah.
We're wrapping up here.
Will McFace? I guess no, that doesn't work. So
River McWillface.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Is that what you were trying to say?
Yes. Except there was a stroke that happened.
Let's see. We're just about done. As live game director, what is it like to be in the position's shoes, to make critical decisions about what you can and will not, what can and will not make it into a release? How, as part of the head of the organization, does the feedback from the community affect your day-to-day professional outlook or environment? I'm just going to hit the button and let you go. Go ahead.
I guess for me, I have the title live game director, okay, but we've got multiple game directors within the company. So Tony, myself, Rich, Nick, so on and so forth. So basically, I think every director is responsible for their teams and making sure that their teams are doing the job to the best of their ability. And basically the features that come out are as good as they possibly can be. So when we go into these go no goes, it's Tony or Aaron or myself, and if it's one of my teams, I have the meetings before and I make sure that it's ready to go. If it's not ready to go, then I tell Chris and Aaron why, and have those difficult discussions. But each team they have a director associated with it, and so it's those teams doing that. So when we're going into go no goes, and I'm going in for a lot of other teams, then I'm just looking at it and making sure it's hitting what I think it needs to hit, from a player standpoint, the look and feel. Have any of these edge cases been thought about? How many are there other features that need to be done associated with it? Have you, and how many bugs do we have left? What's the overall feel of it? Does it feel good, or is there a little bit of clunkiness to it? But a lot of times when we're going into those things, we expect the directors and we expect the leads and the POs that are working on it to be those initial people saying, yeah, we're happy with this. We're proud of putting this out. And then from there, it's just a call that we make, in that. So, like for Tony, Like if he's looking at something, I trust him to look at it and drive it home. And so when we're going into live meetings or live release meetings, he's there, he's present, he's looking at it and making sure that it's good. If we're talking about like AC or Star Marine or Tau stuff, then that's Sean. He's there. He's in those live release meetings, making sure it looks good. And if there's any bugs need to be chased up or anything like that, he's calling it out. And then I'm doing it for my features. So I am really kind of the point of contact. If things aren't looking or feeling good, and then I chase up those teams and figure out what we can do with production. And then that's really kind of my live game director role. And then other times it's just game director. Basically, we didn't want to have two SC game director positions. So like Tony's got the SC game director, and I've got the SC live game director. So there's that separation. But again, for Tony, he's focused more on the tech. I'm focused more on the look and the feel. And that's kind of how we play off of our roles. And then, as far as working with the community, and dealing with the community stuff, like this to me is golden. Like this is, a lot of times, with other games, you only get that feedback at the very, very end, and you're hoping and you're praying that, yeah, we did this right, and we hit it. And, I can guarantee you that basically every game director or every lead, when a review comes out, when their game goes gold and the reviews start coming out, like they're sweating bullets. You never know. And so this to me allows us to try it out and see what works, what doesn't work. And I work constantly with Bayer and the community team, Eric Green, basically our live production team, to look at the bugs that we have, to triage those, to go through, what's working, what's not working, what did players really gleam onto or grab a hold of, and then what isn't hitting home, as hard as we feel it should hit home. Like, and then we go back to those teams and we talk about it and we figure out how we can adjust it. But like, that's the part that I like. I used to view, like, in games, you've got you'll be working on something and then you do a focus test, and a lot of times you're bringing in people from the outside and you're sitting there watching them play the game. And I would I would view it as that's kind of where dreams go to die. Like you have a dream of, hey, hey, this is how this thing's going to play out and work, and then you watch people play it, and you're just like, oh man, you're just pulling out your hair, like, why don't you know this? Why can't you see this? And this is our way of focus testing. So like this to me is good for us. It's true, it's true feedback and honest feedback, and that to me will only go in. Sometimes it hurts, but sometimes you look at it, you're like, oh yeah, how did we not see that? But it just goes into making the game better, and that to me is what it's all about, is just making the game as good as it possibly can be.
How did we not know players were going to overdose other players in green zones? How did we possibly not know that was going to happen?
Exactly. But that to me is fun. It's interesting gameplay. Like we never knew Jumptown 1 was going to be, so interesting. But like, it's immersive. Like this to me is fun and interesting. Like at least from a career standpoint, like this is so different than all the other stuff that I worked on in the past, and so every day is a new, we call it a new fire, but to put out, but like it's problem solving, and that to me is the fun part. Like I love building and problem solving with the team, and going through that experience. It's new, it's fresh, and it's not for everybody, but like I love that challenge, and I I like it when people tell me, well, you can't do that, and we say, F you, we're going to do it anyways.
It's one of the reasons we get along.
Yeah.
All right, that's it. We're at time, but I gotta ask: are you sure wearing your Salty Crew shirt isn't like? Are you sure? You sure you're not
Yeah.
trying to subtly hint that fishing is coming to Star Citizen?
No, it's something that, at least for me personally, it's super relaxing. My dad and I did it when I was younger, and then I do it with my kids when I can. So like, it's something that is super relaxing. And I went to Florida and I saw the shirt and I was like, all right, I got to get it.
So fishing in 318 then.
No.
319.
Keep on trying.
Keep trying. All right. I tried, everybody. Todd,
Nope.
thank you for being on the show with us this week. Folks, remember that Stella Fortuna. I think Stella Fortuna is still technically going on. You can check that out. There's a bunch of new ship paints, 400, a 400i, and if I were better prepared, I would have had that stuff for you. Check it out. It's not going. And then we'll be back next week with ISC. We got a sprint report and a special look at a team. Those of you in Evocati will probably be very aware of, but I think many of our backers probably don't even know exist. So we're gonna meet that team, and then we are on the way to 317. Currently on track to release at the end of this quarter, hopefully. It's always the hope. And I'm in the process of moving. We're packing up. Every week I see questions about the state of the set. We are packing up. I am relocating to the United Kingdom. I see questions like, "Oh my God, everybody's moving to the UK," and I'm like, I think it's just me. I don't know about where they're getting everybody from, but I'm pretty sure it's just me at this point. So lots of cool stuff happening on the horizon. Todd, again, thank you so much. I'm going to wrap this up and go back and mute that one part because it's pre-recorded and I can. Talk to you later, everybody. Take care.
Ciao.
Bye. I kind of just wanted to say it again right now. F-bomb.